Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Highschool Network. I am one of your hosts, Anushka, and today we have Mr. Morris with us. So, Mr. Morris, how are you feeling today?
Very well, thank you.
So, to start off, what made you decide to teach? Was there a story behind it, or was it just something you stumbled upon? Or
Well, interestingly, my whole family are teachers. So
Okay.
My parents are teachers. My dad's a Spanish and French teacher. My mom's a Spanish teacher. My sister's a Spanish and French teacher. I have two aunties who are teachers. And, I think at least one of my grandparents was a teacher at some point. So you could say that it runs in the family. That's kind of the family trade.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I was your age, if you'd have asked me, what's the one thing you know you don't want to do, I'd have told you you'd be a teacher. Because I remember, going back a long time, I remember saying good night to my parents, and they'd be marking papers or they'd be planning lessons. And I remember that kind of stress that they would kind of go through. It's a very stressful profession, teaching. Mm-hmm. It's one of the top 10 most stressful professions.
I imagine, yeah.
According to statistics, if they're to be believed. So I think I kind of rejected that path quite explicitly. I said, I don't want to be a teacher. But I was always interested in psychology, and before I even knew much about psychology, I knew I wanted to study psychology. Mm-hmm. And so I started at the age of 16, did my A-levels, and just very quickly just got really interested in the idea of educational psychology.
Okay.
So you can see where this is going. I spent the next 5 years, or 6-7 years, with this idea in mind of becoming an educational psychologist. And the path's quite long. You have to become, first of all, get your psychology degree, and then spend at least a couple of years working in schools or working with young people in some formal capacity before you can apply for the doctorate to become a psychologist, an educational psychologist. And that's where I got stuck, because I started traveling to different places as an English teacher. Mm-hmm. So I was getting my experience so I could finally get onto the doctorate. But what happened was that I just suddenly found myself captivated by the idea of being in a classroom and being the teacher. And I realized with international education, I could also fulfill my desire to travel around and to not live in the UK permanently. I was pretty set on an expat lifestyle. So I ended up following my parents' footsteps. And never became a psychologist, but became a psychology teacher.
That's really nice. Do you get stories from international kids? Does that add on to your experience in terms of traveling the world?
Absolutely. I see a lot of similarities between international students and myself. It's very common, especially here in Geneva, to meet students who have up to 3 cultures in their lives, maybe 4. Maybe they've spent 10 years in Switzerland, but their parents are from different places and they've lived in other places. I know yourself, you've lived in many cultures. So, so I see a lot of myself there. So my mum is Colombian and my dad is British. I was raised in England, but then I've lived in Spain, I've lived in Colombia, I've lived in Turkey, I've lived in Australia, I've lived and now in Switzerland. So I feel also like a third culture kid sometimes.
Which culture do you think has had that most impact on you in terms of psychology to in terms of developmental psychology, in terms of thinking and all those things, processing?
Undeniably my home culture of the UK. I was raised there and lived there till I was 21, went back for a few years to train to become a teacher. So culturally I feel very British. But then also when I go home, I have what we call reverse culture shock.
Oh, yes.
This idea of, go on.
Yeah, I experienced that so much. It's actually insane. Whenever I go back to India, actually, it was quite recent because I was in the Ukrainian war and we came back, to India. And I was like, oh no, why am I back home? I got so into the Ukrainian culture, the quiet life. And here I hear noises, so many, this bustling noise of the city, especially Delhi. Yeah. And so then when I left again, now recently we had so many festivals. We had the Diwali function, which is the whole festival of lights. And I miss so many of these things. And I'm like, oh no, I miss my culture now. So it's almost a give and take, especially in this international life that we live, moving so frequently. I definitely feel that culture shock so much.
Yeah. I remember after spending the first year that I lived abroad from the UK was straight after university. I went to live in Barcelona.
Okay.
And after one semester, I came home for Christmas. And just arriving at Manchester Airport, I couldn't believe believe how quiet everybody was.
Mm.
You know, everyone was standing quietly in the queue for the passports, and just looking around at everyone, just not having a word to say to their family and their friends. They were just quietly waiting. And you know, in Spain, people would be talking, people would be sharing things, anything, just talking, just to fill the space. And that was the first time I experienced reverse culture shock, and going back to your home culture and suddenly being surprised by the behavior you see.
Yeah, I can actually. I've been to Spain as well. I've been to Sevilla.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, and we went to. I think we went to France. Before that, we went to Italy. Before that, we went to Milan. And I gotta say, I love Spain so much just because of that bustle, because it reminded me so much of home.
Right.
There's always something going on. Look at any direction. Some people are having a fight. Some people are just laughing. Some people are singing like Bella Ciao, you know. So it was so much fun. But then I link it back to when I was in Milan. It's a very fast-paced life, but yeah, that thing again where people aren't actually talking to each other. Maybe because again, that's like a very tourist perspective, because I wasn't there for a long time. But my initial like interaction, what I initially saw was that, you know, people in Spain, just anywhere there's chaos, and I feel like I love it. I think I've really grown to like it.
Yeah.
Especially now that I've moved away from home, you know.
Yes.
I miss it, and I think that connection was really something that got me connected to Spain culture.
Okay.
But yeah, no, Milan was beautiful too. Well, of course, the
For
architecture was very nice. So, yeah. I wanted to ask, you said that you're really interested in educational psychology.
Yes.
What about it got you very interested?
I mean, you'd have to ask me as a 16-year-old. It's kind of hard to actually remember what the initial draw was, the initial attraction was. I think that ultimately, my guiding principle has always been that I want to be in a profession where I'm helping somebody. Very directly, you know, in front of that person, somehow helping, you know, in a very specific way. And I think that's what drew me to educational psychology. But why specifically educational psychology? I can't even remember. You'll have to ask me as a 16-year-old. But it pretty much defined the rest of my life.
Would you say like it's really fulfilling now that you've been able to accomplish your dream at 16? Do you think?
Well, that wasn't my dream at 16, you know. I wanted to be an educational psychologist, and I'm a psychology teacher. They're very different things.
Oh,
An
yeah.
educational psychologist. When I think now to that life, I'm glad I didn't end up becoming an educational psychologist, because essentially you would go from one school to another. You would maybe spend half a day here, half a day there. You would do some assessments, some observations, maybe have a meeting with some parents and a teacher. And you know, you would be helping specific students in their context. And what I really love about teaching is the relationships you build and develop. So every day I come into the same place and see the same people, have conversations that, you know, oh, how was that thing you told me about on Friday? Oh, it was great. You know, that's the kind of thing that I wouldn't get as an educational psychologist, because I wouldn't have relationships with the people I work with, because I'd be coming in and seeing them once, or maybe twice, maybe 4 or 5 times. But what I love about teaching is that it feels like, you know, you have this base of friends, acquaintances, and students. You know, I love having, you know, friendly relationships with students and getting to know them getting to know me a little bit, and building relationships. So it's almost, I'm happy that I didn't get this dream of becoming an educational psychologist.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, when I first came here, I noticed really quickly that connection between students and teachers is like really easy, you know?
Okay.
Like, especially this year, I think I have really good connections with my teachers.
That's great.
You know, I mean, I'm having a podcast with you right now.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
So I think reaching to that stage was obviously, it's really scary, you know? But also, I like hear stories about, you know, psychology, and I hear stories about, for example, economics or history. You always wonder, why did a person choose this? Like, they actually lived in this subject and they made it their life. So, like, I was really interested in that. And yeah, I would agree, like, psychology, especially in, like, students, in terms of education right now, I definitely see it being applied. Because we talk about it in class, in terms of Vygotsky's theory and all these things, you know. I definitely see it in class, and it's really cool how I'm able to make connections through that now, because I never knew it before. But yeah, it's definitely really interesting, I'd say.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can make connections, you're gonna learn whatever you're learning a lot better.
Yeah.
It's gonna stay with you because it's part of your daily experience. It's not just some abstract information that you've learned from a textbook.
Yeah.
So it's good to hear that.
Yeah.
That's kind of my goal.
Well, I'm really happy I'm able to get there. Of course, yeah, there's a lot of memorize though. A lot of memorization.
Of course.
But
Sadly.
I think it's part of the process in education. But yeah, going a bit more into psychology. This is a
Sure.
kind of psychological question.
Yeah.
And I actually first saw this on Reddit. So to the person who made this question, thank you. But it was, do you think humans are driven by nature or nurture?
Well, you have just asked one of the most fundamental questions we have about human behavior. One of the oldest questions we've had about human behavior. People have been talking about this for thousands of years. The ancient Greeks are talking about this. And it's not just a psychological question, it's a philosophical question, It's a biological question, it's a fundamental question about human beings. I would say from a modern psychological perspective, the answer is, in simple terms, both.
Both, yeah.
Right? And so to put that in a bit more detail, I don't think there are too many people who are just still saying, well, I believe in the classic tabula rasa, we're born a blank slate and everything we are is based on our experiences. I don't think there's too many of those people left. At the same time, there aren't too many of the people who say, well, we can only understand human nature through understanding genetics or the things that we're born with, whatever they may be. So now modern neuroscience is looking at the question of how nature and nurture interact with each other. And rather than nature versus nurture, we like to think of nature via nurture.
Okay.
So let me give you an example of that to make it, I guess, more easy to understand. Let me think, what could be a good example? One of my favorite psychologists said the phrase, ask not what a gene does, but what a gene does in a specific environment. And I suppose what he meant there was that within certain contexts, within certain environments, certain genes are switched on and they're expressed, whereas other genes are switched off and they're not expressed. And if you want to know a bit more about that process, maybe you've already studied this in biology, but epigenetics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were just getting into it, actually, DNA and everything.
Oh, perfect, right? Yeah, perfect. So you'll know more about me. You'll know more than me pretty soon, I promise. But for example, there was an experiment done on rats, not humans actually, so we need to make sure that's clear. It's not human behavior. It was done back in the 80s, 1989. A researcher called Meany and his team, they took a bunch of lab rats, and half of them, they basically raised them without any kind of mother, without any kind of nurture or family. It's a really kind of cruel thing to do, I guess. And with the other rats, they mimicked the action that their mother would have done in terms of licking them. So they got basically a paintbrush and would like brush the rats. It sounds crazy, right? But this mimics what the mother rat would normally do in terms of just comforting and giving that kind of physical mother-child contact. So they basically paint the rats. And what they found was that the painted rats had much more resilience to stress. And were much more capable of dealing with stressful situations. And this has all sorts of neural implications. So basically, if you are constantly drowned in stress hormones, what we call glucocorticoids, things like cortisol. You know this already. I see you nodding, this can have all sorts of negative effects on your brain. For example, there's one part of the brain called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is involved in forming memories. So these stress hormones can just basically break down this hippocampus. It's called hippocampal cell death. And so what they found was that these rats that weren't brushed, they took a very, very long time to find safety in this big pool of milky water, something they call the Morris Maze. It's nothing to do with me, the same name. Whereas the brushed rats, when they threw them into this milky water, the rats very quickly found the way out and then could remember the way out. So it goes to show then how the environment, so either having a nurturing mother or having no mother at all, then impacts later behavior, in this case remembering the location of a place to go. So that was a long way to answer your question. I guess the answer is both. our nature is expressed via the things we experience in the environment.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. For me, I actually thought of it like it's like a like almost a reaction case. For example, like there's a pendulum thing where if it hits one ball, the other ball moves, like that whole psychological like sort of chain reaction.
Yeah.
Because, for example, I thought of it in both cases, like as a like what the Greeks would think in a very old way. It's like one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, if somebody had a good nature, right, and they're living in a great area, they're really rich, really good, but they don't have a good family to take care of them, or they don't have good friends, they don't have a good environment in terms of like mentally and like nurture, for example, then that person, I imagine they would grow to be very cold, like they wouldn't feel that kind of warmth or passion, that other people would kind of teach them. Like, for example, the mother figure, a little traditional, but yeah. And then I thought about it. What if somebody had so much, like, what if they had an amazing mother? What if they had really good friends, but they're not in a good environment? They're not in a good nature. Like, they're, not able to have good nutrition. They're not able to kind of travel far or see new things. Then I feel like that would also negatively impact both situations, in a sense. So you definitely need both.
Completely.
For sure, you need both, or else it's really hard to think of how people go over that. Because obviously, I come from a place where the majority of people, they go through a very hard environment, but they come out the strongest people, in my opinion. Really, I mean, they can adapt to any other place because of how strong that is. But is it really needed for that person to be strong, to go through such a strong and harsh environment? I don't think so. I think it's quite cruel way to treat young people, even old people, any people in general, humans. So, yeah.
I agree. Yeah, what I love about epigenetics is it frees us from the chains of our DNA. We don't need to think of our genes as being deterministic, like that our genes will determine everything about us. It shows that we do have a kind of the choice. Okay, so if I'm going to exercise, if I'm going to ensure that I am mentally stimulated and not kind of, not spending my life scrolling through a phone, then, hopefully then my gene expression will reflect this and will come out more positively than it would do if I just decided to be a couch potato and never, never read a book. Like that. So it gives us that power almost, and that confidence that our behaviors can have a real positive impact on ourselves and other people as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Also, I think that nurture part comes up with the behaviors as well. Like, I definitely see myself imitating a lot of my older sister's behaviors, more than my parents, which is a little strange.
Yeah.
But she's 10 years older than me.
Okay.
And I feel like I've always looked up to her in a sense. I really hope she doesn't listen to this because this is a very... But, no, yeah, for example, I feel like the way she handles things independently, because she was the first child, she was there when my family was in a completely different place. And, going through different changes, but she did it all by herself.
Yeah. Wow.
And also, again, she's also moved to different places in 3 years. She's also had to deal with losing friends, making friends, introducing herself, doing the whole, hello, my name is Anushka, hello, my favorite color is this. She's done that so many more times than I have.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah, and imagining that life, it's so, I think monotonous is the word? Like repeating?
Yeah.
So repeating, and it's like kind of gray almost. And then I imagine myself, I don't think I could have done it myself. I feel like I'm really glad that I have a sister, that I can rely on her experiences, the way she dealt with things, and then implementing that in my life, to cope with that change, as every human does.
That's so cool that you had a role model like that in your life. Yeah.
I'm just really thankful. I think it's one of the most things I'm grateful for, is having a person I can, look up to and also ask and not feel, kind of intimidated or something.
Yeah.
So... Yeah,
I can't quite remember what the details are, but there is a point where the influence of our parents becomes less than the influence of our peers or I guess in this case siblings. I think there's a certain point where we actually, this is almost maybe even the purpose of adolescence, where we find our own path and we reject our parents. It's maybe why I decided not to become a teacher so adamantly, and only eventually after all the, adolescence and all that period, we come back to our parents.
Do you ask your parents about like, how was your years teaching, or how did you mark these things? Like, did you ask
Now I
ever?
do.
Yeah.
I had zero interest when I was your age, but now sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, I can think back and I can really appreciate what they did for us.
Mm-hmm.
That they were juggling so much, because we do juggle a lot. When working parents and you're teaching, you've got your own kids, but you've also got your students who are kind of like your kids as well. You're caring about so many people at once. So now I can think back and really appreciate them more than I did when I was a teenager, unfortunately.
Yeah, the hormones. Have you like applied like these like social concepts that you've also through psychology? Have you applied them in your social relationships?
Perhaps not as deliberately
Mm-hmm.
as sometimes people assume.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very common question from students, like, oh, do you do this to people, or do you use psychology against people? Something like that. Absolutely not. At the end of the day, I'm just a human being, and for example, when I teach about cognitive biases,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that I'm suddenly immune to being biased myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just as vulnerable to my cognitive biases as anybody else. Just because I know about them doesn't mean I can avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can a little bit be more careful, and maybe somebody who doesn't know much about cognitive biases. But anyway, so with social relationships, so every time I teach developmental psychology, we talk about parenting.
Yeah.
I reevaluate, and I'm saying, okay, so sometimes I do this, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do, sometimes I'm the type of parent who I know, is more likely to give a negative outcome to my child. And I suppose it's a nice reminder of the things that I do well, but also a reminder to say, okay, so maybe we can, maybe me and my wife, we can respond differently when this certain context situation happens.
Yeah.
But it's difficult. It's difficult to do that all the time, even if you know what the right way to be is. And the same goes with my marital relationship with my wife, Every time we do relationships, and that's the topic we're doing currently in higher level, and we talk about communication, Gottman, who's the big communication researcher, he says that in an ideal marriage there should be 5 positive comments to every 1 negative comment. That's the perfect ratio, 5 to 1. Okay. And I read that and I go, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I don't tell my wife that I love her enough. I don't tell her she looks great enough. I don't compliment her on her work, or on her personality as much as I should do. And I feel terrible, but at least it's a reminder, to try and be better.
Yeah.
So I guess in answer to your question, I try as much as possible.
Yeah, I thought that learning psychology, especially like educational psychology, I imagine that you'd be really good in terms of like teaching your kids these values, because I feel like they'd grow up like really open-minded, or because now I'm learning this at 16. Imagine having these thoughts when you're much younger. I feel like that's really cool, because you're able to be so much more broad-minded at such a young age. And of course, there's that whole thing about, taking time to be a child. But I actually feel really conflicted by that.
Okay.
Because I am a child, technically.
Right.
But, I take the train by myself every day, and I go through life situations that could be really harmful just in a second. You wouldn't know. But things could just randomly happen. But if you look at it, a child is supposed to be protected by those things. So in certain situations, am I a child, or am I an adult, or am I an adolescent teenager? I don't know which one I am. I think that's why there's the whole teenager question, I think. What is it being a teenager? Yeah. And also school, you're traveling, you're balancing your school and work, not work, but sometimes some kids work, some of my friends work. How do you do that? How do you balance homework and doing work? I mean, working in labs, and then obviously your family. Prioritize your family and make food for yourself or do chores. How do you do all those things in one? It's I don't understand.
Yeah, but I think you're coping well.
I'm trying. I'm trying, but
it doesn't get any easier even when you become an adult, fully adult. It's difficult.
Yeah.
Life's a juggling act.
Especially, in university, my parents always tell me, how are you gonna handle, taking care of yourself? How are you gonna handle all this? We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I wanted to ask another thing that sparked some interest is, as a psychology teacher and a person who's like passionate about psychology, what is like a big misconception about it?
Oh, there are many.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole book about the greatest myths in psychology. It's one of my favorites to read. If you remember, we talked about a few of them at the beginning of the year. I mean, the classic ones are like, we only use 10% of our brains. Mm-hmm. That's just ridiculous, I mean, neural tissue is so expensive from an evolutionary point of view. There's so much lipid and fats and all these like difficult to acquire materials from the environment. Why would we have 90% of it just sitting there doing nothing?
Yeah.
One of the hardest things about our anatomy is the fact that we have such big heads. Mm-hmm. The reason why we have such big heads is for our much more developed cortexes, right? Mm-hmm. But that creates this big problem because we're bipedal. We have two legs, but things in this shape and form shouldn't have such a heavy thing on top.
Really?
But we overcame these. Yeah. It made evolutionary sense. I mean, there's no intention here with evolution, but we evolved in this way because we needed to have this brain this size. Mm-hmm. If we only needed 10% of it, really we'd just be walking around with little pea heads, right? But we don't. So that's just a crazy myth that was debunked a long time ago. But you still hear it, especially in like Scientology. They talk about that one a lot in Scientological pamphlets and stuff that I've seen in Geneva, when the Scientologists handing out their leaflets. I'm like, this is just crazy, debunked stuff. In educational settings, the whole learning styles thing, totally debunked. That some people are visual learners, other people are kinesthetic learners, and that teachers need to kind of make sure that all the kinesthetic learners are, using Play-Doh or whatever. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, I don't know how to teach TOK with Play-Doh alone. And it's not really based on science. Mm-hmm. And then Freud. Oh. Sigmund Freud, he set us back a few decades. Yeah. His ideas were, in my opinion, pseudoscientific, meaning you couldn't test those ideas, you couldn't falsify them. Yeah. If you tried to falsify Freud, the Freudian psychoanalyst would come back and say, well, of course you would say that because you're using such and such defense mechanism. Or, yes, we can't measure that thing because it's in the unconscious mind. And so
it's like, how far does it go?
Yeah, you can never test any of their ideas. You can never prove them wrong, which is a big sign that it's not scientific. So I'd say there's many.
Yeah, I've never thought about that, especially the pea-size, brain, 10% of your brain. I never thought that evolution would be linking to symmetrics, like in terms of like how humans are made a certain way, why we have two legs, why we have two arms, why we have a head that's like right on top of everything. Yeah. But
just like with all living organisms, we're an absolute miracle. We are, in bioengineering terms, we are precisely crafted, insanely efficient beings. And at least in my opinion, because I'm not religious, I'm an atheist, I believe in the idea that natural selection has formed us in this way. Yeah. And I quite like the writing of, or the concept, or the metaphor, used by Richard Dawkins, who I know is a controversial figure, but a pretty well-respected Cambridge or Oxford, I can't remember, geneticist. And he said that evolution, or anything produced by evolution, is like something produced by a blind watchmaker, an unintentional process that has been done blind, but will eventually lead to something intricate and beautiful, like a pocket watch. Yeah, I like that analogy.
I think it's really something I've never heard before, because that metaphor to me, when I try to link it to what I've seen in terms of evolution, like there's this one video where they show you like a tadpole, like how like we're like a tadpole to like a monkey to a human, like how all these things evolved. Yeah, and there's one video where it was like how humans are made, and I swear to God, the first half of the video was just blank. And I was like, is this a joke? Like, it's 10 minutes long. first half of the video is blank. It's just white.
Nothing.
And then the other half is just human. I was like, what do you mean human? Like there's just like a picture of a human.
Yeah.
And then they're making families, and then there's a whole bunch, and there's more. Now there's a whole population.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such confusion. But when I was younger, I was really mad because I watched it for like a project. I was like, I wasted 10 minutes of my life my project is, I'm going to get a fail. Then I think about it now, I was like, that was actually really smart. That was a really smart way to tell kids to not expect what you think. Kind of look at the broader image. Maybe try fill out the white blank yourself. Mm-hmm. Imagination, which I like about our human brain. I really like that we're able to imaginate. We're able to dream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is a little strange, but from my family, my mom, she's really spiritual. She's really religious, and she really believes in dreams as well. Like certain dreams tell you certain things.
Okay.
So like the story she tells me sometimes is insane, but yeah, I really like how vast our mind is, I'd say, in that sense.
Interesting. I think it makes a lot of sense that somebody would believe that a dream has some kind of real world significance.
Mm-hmm.
Because quite often, our dreams are basically the products of the things we've been thinking about and things we've been experiencing. Like a modern theory of dreaming is that dreaming is almost like a byproduct of our brain's not necessarily reorganization, but it's deleting and storing of memory.
Okay.
So the idea is when you go to sleep, you kind of select which memories seem to be important, and they're usually the emotional ones or the repeated ones, and they're kind of stored for later use. We're talking in metaphors here. And then the rest of it is like, well, this is a load of junk, let's just delete. So that's stuff like what you had for breakfast, what you learned in class, or various things. And so in this process of kind of deleting and storing, your brain's super active.
Yeah.
You've probably heard of REM sleep, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is when your brain is almost as active as or just as active as it is when you're awake. And then the idea is that dreams are a kind of like byproduct or residue of this process. So it makes total sense that you'll dream about something you've been thinking about a lot. And they've done like dream analysis for children, for example. What do you think kids dream of the most?
What do they experience that they...
Yeah, it's like their friends.
Yeah.
And then stuff that they hear about a lot.
Yeah.
So they often dream about animals because, loads of the books and films and TV shows they watch are about animals. During the rise of Nazism in the 1930s, people were dreaming about people spying on them or people ratting them out, or dreaming about big people coming to kind of take over their lives, or this kind of stuff, which reflected exactly what the daily struggles were of people in that time.
Yeah.
So for somebody to have this idea or this sense that dreams have real world meaning makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Because quite often they're exactly linked to what you've been thinking about or doing.
Yeah. It's really crazy. I there's this one where it's happened quite a few times where I just like fall. I just keep falling.
Oh, yeah.
And then I wake up. And then I think it happened also one time in a train when I was just napping for a bit. I was just sleeping and then I fall and then I wake up. I was like, what?
It's one of the most common dreams.
Yeah.
You should Google it, like the top 10 most common dreams. One is falling.
Yeah.
Have you ever dreamt that you've lost your teeth? Your teeth have fallen out?
I've never dreamt
It's a very common one, apparently. I've never had that.
Have you had any of the most common ones?
I'm sure I have. Falling, I remember, dreaming of falling. The classic one, like, suddenly being in a very vulnerable position in public, like usually being without clothes in public, that's a common dream. Or suddenly realizing you have like a meeting or a lesson or whatever, and you're unprepared. Yeah. And then somebody's coming in to observe you or whatever.
Yeah, I've had a ton of those. Especially the missing a class one.
Yeah.
Like in the morning, like it's Saturday, and you're like, oh my god, I'm late for class, and then you wake up, this ruined my Saturday.
Oh man.
But psychology is crazy, it's so vast, and it goes into everything.
Yeah.
It actually spills into everything. I feel like people who have done extraordinary things or really maybe even strange things. Like, I feel like their psychology or their mind, their brain, either way, whichever one that could be explained would be really heavily rewarded or like really important. Like, oh yeah, I saw this thing where it's Professor Einstein. Yeah. Apparently his brain was cut into like more than 100 pieces.
Oh, really?
To be tested on, because obviously he's one of the most greatest physicians ever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What did they find?
I honestly don't know. I mean, what could you... I was thinking about it. If your brain is cut into 100 pieces, how much could you actually extract? And that too, I'm not sure if this is correct, but I think each part of the brain is different. You know, obviously there's one side of moment, one side of remembering, one side of interaction. All these things are differently spread out in your brain.
Right.
So if you have one part of it, how would you extract enough knowledge? And how would you coordinate those 100 people with different findings to put together a piece of invaluable information of psychology? How would you do that?
Yeah, I don't know really.
Yeah, but going back to teaching, of course, what would you say has been the most rewarding part of being a teacher?
It's the relationships.
It's
like the social relationships, you know. For example, I have a band.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's just a bit of fun, and, you know, no one's planning to become a rock star. We all know our time has passed. But, you know, I know that on either a Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, you know, I can hang out with my colleagues, and we don't need to talk about work for even a second. We're there because we all enjoy playing music together, and we do it for fun. And I can't think... every school I've worked in, I've played in the teacher's band.
Oh, really?
It's one of the first things I ask is like, okay, who's playing music? Like, is there a band going on? And if there's not, I try and make one, because it's just and I know you could do that in other places of work as well, but I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of teachers out there who wanted to be rock stars and ended up teaching and still want to kind of scratch that itch on the weekend. So stuff like that I really, really enjoy. And, you know, it goes back to the first thing I said. You know, I want to help people. So when I see, let's say, a student graduate in IB2, and, you know, I compare who they are then to who they were at the beginning of IB1, and I see the trajectory, and to know that I've been just a teeny tiny part of that development, that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
And it's like the reward is right there in front of you. You know, you can see the person go off to university, and maybe they'll be a slightly more critical thinker or a slightly more better communicator than they would have been if it wasn't for you. And for me, that's enough.
Yeah, and that's actually one response I've heard from the past two teachers I've had on the podcast.
Yeah.
So it's really nice hearing that again. And I also saw another video on YouTube, and it was asking other teachers of different subjects. We don't know which subjects, but asking them what is the most rewarding part about being a teacher. And most of them said that their colleagues were also a big part of their reward, in a sense, because they helped them balance out that work-life kind of situation. Would you say the same in terms of the band? Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, if you can be friends with your colleagues, then work becomes not just work. It becomes something else.
Yeah. Would you also say that it maybe took you a while to understand that work-life balance?
Well, this is a constant battle for teachers. Teachers are blessed in the fact that we have long holidays, and there's not many professions where you have 15, 16-week holidays. You know, most people you speak to, they have 5, 6, 7-week holidays, and so we're very lucky in that sense. But during the term, during the semester, I don't think we have really normal working conditions.
Yeah.
You know, for example, I'll speak to a friend who works in the private sector, mainly behind a desk or a laptop. When they have a presentation, it's like the big event of the week. Like, I've got a presentation, Friday morning I'm presenting, and you know, it's super important, all this kind of stuff. And you're like, okay, yeah, that sounds stressful. Then you're like, wait, I do like 4 of those a day. In each of my classes is kind of like a presentation, all right?
Yeah.
So it's not like you're not just standing at the front talking all the time, but you know, you are leading this thing. It's called a lesson, and it's stressful, and you need to be prepared. You need to make sure there's cool activities. You need to make sure it's going to be engaging. To make sure that they're learning something, and and you're checking that they're learning something, and all these things that go into a good lesson, you know. So I think we deserve our holidays.
Yeah.
Because we work hard, you know. And it's very common, you know, sadly, for me to open my laptop at 9 o'clock and do an hour's work before bed. You know, or Sunday evening, the dreaded Sunday evening. Okay, I've got to plan Monday's psychology lesson with you. You know? And it's a pleasure in the end, but it's a lot of work. And so work-life balance is a constant nagging question that I have. You know, am I getting the balance right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I try not to, and I know it's bad. But sometimes I just enjoy it. It sounds really sad, but there's certain aspects of my work that I enjoy. So I would probably spend not too long, but longer than I should do on those things. Now, I'd like to receive the advice.
Yeah.
So yeah, please give me advice on how to balance my work life.
Sir, I'm a teenager. Oh God, balance. Oh, it's like not in my books at all. And it's similar. I feel like that advice I find from there is another. Oh my God, I'm so tied to YouTube. This is really bad. But I think there's a video. I think it's a 1-minute video of this old man. I think he's advice from an old man.
Yeah.
It's literally. Yeah. Have you seen it?
No, it sounds great.
Okay. Yeah, it's I think so many views now, but it's years ago, like really old, and he was talking about just living in the moment. I think that's what he said, because that's the best thing you can do for yourself in that moment. And as humans, we know that we have a long lifespan. Most of us, you know, we know that we're gonna have we're gonna live a long time.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a lot of years ahead of us. We're gonna meet so many people. We already know that, you know, from life experience. So he said, we know that. Okay, but what do we not know? We don't know what's gonna happen in the next couple 20 minutes. We don't know what's gonna happen in the next couple 30 minutes. You might end up in the hospital. You might end up having a lottery ticket. You might have won $1 million. Of course, the chances are really small. But yeah, and then humans also, the chances are very small. Being born a boy or a girl, like it's 50-50, but how do you even know if you're born? Like, it's a whole thing. So yeah, that was really crazy.
Living in the moment.
Living in the moment.
Advice from an old man. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take that on.
And I also wanted to ask you, if you could hypothetically meet one historical psychologist from ages and ancient, you know, or any time, what would it be, and who would you ask? Like, what would you ask them? And
I would like to meet somebody called Robert Sapolsky. I already mentioned him. Firstly, he's a pretty cool researcher. Like he does he's a neuroscientist.
Oh, yeah.
Then he also studies natural populations of baboons in Uganda.
Oh.
And he spends 6 months a year in Uganda studying these baboons. So he's got like a broad range of research areas. But that's not why I want to meet him. I want to meet him because he's a funny guy.
Oh, yeah.
He's hilarious. So when you go onto YouTube and look at his lectures that are up there, you know, they're very, very informative but very funny. He's a funny guy, and he always links in what he's saying to popular culture. There's all these cultural references. And I read one of his books called Behave, and it's just funny. So I think I'd love to go for a drink with Robert Sapolsky.
I think I'd like to meet Milgram.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Where's that? Why Stanley Milgram?
Yeah, electric shocks. Who thinks that? First of all, I feel like when I first entered that class and I saw the picture on the PPT, I was really confused. Like, what are we doing today, sir? Like, I was really confused. And we got into it, and my first thought was, how does one person think about giving electric shocks to people? Like, I feel like you have to go through a lot to think of something like that, you know, as a person. Because I actually do think our personal experiences kind of evaluate how we are as people as well. And of course, maybe that differs on people and the percentages of how much you express it or not. But I mean, like, giving shocks to people to test their obedience, I feel like is a really, really cutthroat experiment. And obviously at the time there wasn't an ethical board.
Yeah.
So
it's a crazy procedure. And of course there were no real electric shocks.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it all the more fascinating and kind of scary. It's interesting. We can link Milgram to what you were saying before about explaining history through psychology. Now, I'm not sure how compelling an argument it was, but of course Milgram was trying to explain acts, of genocide, the
Yeah.
Holocaust.
Yeah.
He had a Jewish background, and I think some of his family were murdered during the Holocaust. So again, he was trying to explain history using psychological principles, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool thing to try and do.
Yeah, I agree. It's really vast. Like I said, like psychology goes into almost everything now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Because it really wasn't a huge part of my life before. I mean, realistically, I don't even know what was a huge part of my life before, of course, like family, friends, but now I'm able to actually link to real life things with psychology more than, okay, this is a bit biased because I prefer psychology more than maths, so I don't see numbers everywhere I look, but I do see psychology in a sense where what's happening there. Is that conformity?
Yeah.
Is that bias?
Very good, yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, so finally, one last question. Can you share a memorable experience that has changed or shaped your perspective?
I'm going to say the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it really just reminded me how important the basics are.
Mm-hmm.
It reminded me how important things like relationships are, family, friendship, exercise, eating well, time to do things like reading a book. And sometimes I need to kind of put myself back into how I thought about life during the pandemic. So just to give you some context, like most people, it was a scary time and it was a very uncertain time, but fortunately we found ourselves with a lot more time on our hands than we used to have. And I think having that time back to really invest in the things that really matter, I just despite how sad the virus was and how it was really shaping people's lives in very negative ways, I was fortunate enough to have more time to spend on myself and remember, and more time to be with my family, more time to remember the most important things in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And in a sad way, I kind of miss it.
Oh, yeah.
Although I don't miss all the pain and suffering that it caused.
Yeah, I miss the free time.
Yeah.
I miss that, I definitely miss the free time because I think the pandemic gave something that was really unique, which was time with something we never get as humans.
Yeah.
I mean, as teachers, even less, students again, basically anybody. That time, of course, it went through very fast. I feel like from 2020 to 2025, almost 2026, in a couple days. I think it's just been a blur,
Yeah.
But the first 2 years was definitely very long, in my opinion. It's like, what is this? Where did this come from?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so what a conversation. So thank you for being on this podcast, sir. Obviously, for the listeners at home, anywhere, listening to the podcast, we went through a lot of themes of psychology, of personal experience, teaching. I strongly recommend to go watch that video on advice from an old man, because we will not find that much. So yeah, thank you, sir, for joining today.
Thank you, Anushka, for having me on your podcast. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So yeah, see you guys in the next one. Bye.